Hi everybody, welcome back. I hope you guys had a good break. I want to talk to you this week about our process as artists and what we do to create our artwork, which can be totally different for each of us. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I wanted to do it in a couple different ways. The first thing I want to do is show you a commission piece that I'm working on, and a commission piece means that somebody else commissions an artist specifically to do one piece of artwork. So it might be somebody says, I want for you to do a picture of my mom or my family or my dog, or maybe there's a scene that I'd really like for you to paint. And they get to choose what you're going to create. So I'm going to show you my piece right here that I'm working on. I'm going to stand back a little bit so you can see it. So this is actually a photo. And this image, as you can see, it's pretty crazy. There's a lot going on in there, right? All right, so I was commissioned to create this piece onto a painting. So what I'm doing, I'm gonna hold this up here. It's kind of hard to see at this stage, but I'll keep you posted as I finish it up. But each of these lines, I gridded that whole picture, and we talked about gridding a couple weeks ago, creating a grid, and then you can take each box and just focus your mind on what's inside of the box. So here we got, you can see those faces kind of mushed together in there. Right up here, there's even a bike that was up in there as well. So there's a lot going on, but if I take this grid and I put it onto my canvas, then that helps my mind to kind of break things down in a little bit and be like, okay, I'm working on this box. Now I'm working on this box. And that way I don't get all jumbled up with all the different pieces of it. All right, so I wanted to show you guys that just because our process is really important. So generally speaking for myself, I like to draw things freehand, and my process is to kind of think of ideas, start sketching, and then start developing freehand. But sometimes if you're working on a commission or something that's outside of your comfort zone or what you're used to, you have to adopt a different process. So we're going to start talking about that this week. And I have a handout that I actually am going to include with this video, and it looks like this. Oops, artistic process here. All right, so I'm going to include that for Miss Deborah, and I want to go over this with you because I'd like for us to work on the first part of the artistic process, which is coming up with ideas. And ideas for some of us, and you might even notice, if you're with your friends or something, there's like some people who you say, I need an idea about this, and boom, 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 they start to think of ideas really quickly. Others of us have to sit with it, like maybe the next day we'll think of something, right? And so we have different ways of coming up with ideas, but there's a couple tips we can use to give ourselves what we need to create those ideas, no matter how our mind works, okay? So the first thing that I want to talk about is making space. Making space. So that's going to be number one on our list for step one of creating ideas is making space, and that's away from distractions. All right, so number one is make space away from distractions. So if you're trying to work and maybe people are talking to you, you're in the middle of a main space, or maybe the TV's on, somebody's watching a show or playing a game, you might want to find a little bit of room where you can have space away from everything. Maybe you listen to soft music, or maybe you just want it to be quiet. We're a little different that way as well. Sometimes I like to listen to songs that are familiar, that I know really well, because they just kind of disappear in the background. Whereas if I'm listening to new music that I don't know, sometimes I get distracted by that. So you can kind of pay attention to what makes you feel like you have that space available to you where you don't feel like you're getting distracted. And it's not easy. Sometimes we're just in a mood where we're feeling really distracted. All right, so sometimes you have to wait for that time where our mind settles a little bit, or maybe we just need to sit a little longer in that space. Okay, so number one is to make space. Number two is to take time. If I go and I sit in my space, maybe I clear out a space where no one's around and I sit there, and then 2 minutes later I say, I couldn't come up with an idea, and then I get up and I leave. All right, so that's not really taking the time that you need, because maybe you need more time than that. And sometimes you need enough time that you can even come back to it. So maybe I take an hour and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to give myself this whole hour so that I can just think of whatever ideas that I want to think about. I'm not going to put pressure on myself to come up with it in the first 5 minutes. If I need to get up and stretch or walk around, I'm going to do that too. And so you have enough time for your mind to think about ideas. All right, and I actually have time as number 2 and number 3 because it's that important to take yourself a little bit of time to come up with ideas. All right, now the 4th one is confidence. So sometimes when we talk about confidence, we think about being sure of ourselves, and being confident just making feel kind of secure, like you feel like you know what's going on. But in this case, I want you to think about confidence in terms of not worrying about mistakes. And I know that's so hard to do because we don't like to make mistakes. Nobody does. But when you're working on the idea phase, you actually do want to make mistakes. Mistakes are good. It just means that you're thinking outside of what you're used to drawing. If you know that you know how to draw a cat, and every single time you draw a cat, you draw a cat, you draw a cat, then you're pretty sure you're not going to make a mistake. But if you all of a sudden try to draw a bird and you've never drawn one before, you're almost certainly going to make a mistake. And that's good because that's your idea phase. It's not the final. So you don't even need to worry about it. Just know you're going to make mistakes. And that's good because it means you're probably thinking of new ideas. All right, so that's number 4. And then our last one, number 5, is humor. So when I'm saying humor in this, I'm thinking sense of humor. And when I'm thinking about that is just opening yourself up to creativity by not taking yourself too seriously. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the last one, to just be light with yourself. Be light with yourself. Maybe you're thinking of an idea and then you go to kind of sketch it out and it doesn't really work. That's all right. Just relax, laugh with it. It doesn't have to be super serious. All right, because when we get into the serious mode, it's good to be a little more focused and serious when we're working on our final. But when we're trying to generate ideas, we want to stay light, we want to stay loose, and we don't want to be too hard on ourselves because then we start to kind of shut down a little bit. All right, so sense of humor, stay light with it in the idea phase especially. Okay, so those are my tips for creating ideas. This is actually from an actor and writer named John Cleese, and he creates comedies. And this is his method, I kind of reworded it a little bit, but this is his method for creativity. So what I'd like to do with this, in thinking of process, I want us this week to think about creating and organizing ideas, the very beginning of our artistic process. So I want you to think of 3 ideas, and this could be anything in the world that you want to draw or paint, anything in the world. If you want to do something 3D, like if something you want to sculpt, that's okay with me if you have those materials available to you. So I guess we'll just leave it open to a piece of artwork. Doesn't necessarily have to be drawing or painting, okay? But I want you to think of 3 ideas. An example would be, maybe one would be, I want to draw a cat in a field. And another one would be, I want to draw a pet store. And another one would be, I want to draw a rainbow. Just 3 different ideas, whatever they are. And I want you to develop those ideas a little bit. Just think about them and decide which one is your favorite one. I would like you to push the envelope a little bit in terms of what you're drawing. Try to maybe think of something you wouldn't normally draw. What did we have today in class? I started this lesson. Somebody did an exploding watermelon. Somebody did unusual rainbows. So instead of being a rainbow that was curved, it was kind of like in an angle like that. All right, so those are just a couple of ideas. So I'd like for you to think of 3. Then I want you to choose your favorite one, and I want you to create thumbnail sketches of that one idea. So I'm going to show you what I mean here. So we got 3 ideas, and then you choose your favorite one. And remember, this is about the process, so don't think about it being perfect. Just think about your 3 ideas, what could they possibly be, and then choose your favorite one. And then we're going to create thumbnail sketches. And thumbnail sketches, I'm going to show you, this is from an earlier or a younger class, a younger grade. And so she actually has different images in her thumbnails. But this is what I mean by thumbnail sketch. Okay, and you can do some that are horizontal, that are placed this way, and some that are vertical. All right, this way. So whatever your idea is, let's say that you ended up deciding on a unicorn, or that was going to be your image, a unicorn that was standing in a field. So this one, maybe you have the unicorn really far off in the distance, and you have the field here. Maybe in this one, you have the unicorn right up in the front, and maybe you have a different background behind it if you'd like. And then on this one, the format is different, right? Because the paper is going long ways. So maybe you think about having the unicorn's whole body taking up the whole page. instead of being off in the distance or something like that, okay? So once you get to your thumbnail stage, I'd like for you to think about that specific idea in 3 different ways. So this is how we kind of start to figure out what our final is going to eventually look like. But in keeping with our process, we're going to take our time this week. We're actually going to develop this over the next couple weeks. Okay? So I have this paper. I'm going to attach it with the video, and at the very bottom, you have what your task is for this week, okay? So you have a little reminder here. If you have any trouble with the words, you can always look back at this video because we went over each one. Okay, so if any of those words are tough for you, you can always look back at this video. I'm gonna do a little review here. We start off with making space, and then we take our time. We do that twice because it's so important to give ourselves time. And then we have our confidence by trying not to worry about mistakes and actually being happy about mistakes because we know we're pushing ourselves with those. And then finally, having a sense of humor about it. Try not to take this stage too seriously. And there's plenty of room to be serious as we start to get into the final. But this is just a little bit more about letting loose and really getting those ideas out. Okay? And then finally here, when we're organizing our ideas, the next step, once we get those ideas in our heads, we're gonna create those thumbnails, all right? And the thumbnails are these small drawings, and we do them small because we don't wanna take a whole lot of time. We just kind of wanna get the idea for what our image is gonna look like that we can end up putting onto a regular size piece of paper or onto a canvas, whatever we're gonna do, okay? All right, so those are our thumbnail sketches. And then if you look at the bottom of that paper, that's where it tells you what I'd like for you to do for this week. It's 3 ideas and then 3 thumbnail sketches of your number 1 idea, the one that you decided was your favorite out of those 3. Now, even if you have your number 1 idea and you're like, this is my number 1 idea, this is what I wanna do right off the bat, I still want you to think of 2 other ideas. It's really important to me. I'd like for you to think of 2 other ideas just in case, because you never know. I've done that before where I'm like, I know that this is how I want my image to be, but then I made myself create those 2 extra ideas or however many extra ideas that I felt like I needed. And sometimes I end up going with one of the other ideas, even though I was so sure that I thought I knew what I wanted to do. Okay, so this is what we're doing for this week. We're talking about process, and we're at the very beginning process. And that's the really fun part because there's no pressure. You don't have to worry about anything being perfect here at all. You want it to be imperfect because we're just brainstorming ideas, coming up with ideas. Okay? All right. So that's our work for this week. If you get your thumbnails ready and you'd like to send them to me, that would be wonderful. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to email me as well. And I will see you guys soon. Thank you.